You are listening to Faithless Brewing, a Magic the Gathering podcast for the Spike Bros. Each week, we design new decks for tournament play, and then put our creations to the test so we can share our findings on the air. On today's episode, David and Moore go into detail regarding Pioneer. Does the format deserve any bans? And I think David has some pretty strong suggestions regarding the topic, and why unbanning is the true answer. Followed by that, they dig deep into Showdown of the Skalds, but what can be done with the second runner-up from the monthly project? Didn't you see? And hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Faithless Brewing podcast. I am David Robertson, joined by my man from down under. He is Mordekaiser from Buenos Aires. What is going on, my guy?
Heyo. Hey David, how is it going? Hope you're doing well.
I am well. Summer is finally here in Minnesota after a historically cold and rainy April. It is beautiful out. Everybody is out celebrating. Everybody's out enjoying the sun. So
that's what a really evil man would say. 15 seconds later, because 5 seconds before we started recording, I said, I'm freezing myself to death. And the first thing we hear is how, in the other side of the world, they're just living the summer life. And I'm here practically hanging my stove.
What is freezing to death in Buenos Aires? What is that temperature?
I don't speak Fahrenheit, so in Celsius... it was 5 degrees today, which is... Let me check that in American.
Yeah, I mean, we need real temperatures here. That's
41.
Oh.
Nah, it's just complaining freezing, not really freezing.
Yeah, Argentinian freezing.
I mean, we're not in... Yeah, it's the beginning of winter. It tends to go to like -2, -3 at most. We don't really freeze. We just complain.
Well, the central human...
The central human characteristic.
All right, so we have a ton of stuff today. We are going to talk about a bunch of different announcements. There was already a ban announcement in Explorer. There was a bunch of new product previewed this week, including today. And then we wanted to take a look at some Showdown of the Skalds brews. But first, we have to take care of some housekeeping. So we want to give a shout out to our latest members of the Patreon, and there are a bunch of them. So we have Greg C, we have Aaron L, we have Benjamin S, we have Greg D, we have Paul L, we have Bogdan V, and Jordan L. So welcome everybody to the Patreon. It's going to be crowded in there.
It was a good influx. Also, big shout out to Aaron L, a lead good friend of mine since the beginning, since we were playing Nib together. So it's one of those people that has followed me since the early beginnings.
Excellent. Yeah. So welcome to everybody. Just a reminder, if you enjoy the show and you want to support us, the best way to do so is to go to patreon.com/faithlessbrewing. Join at whatever level is comfortable for you. You get access to the Discord where there are tons of crazy ideas getting fired around in all different kinds of formats, all kinds of discussion of spoilers, etc. There's a bunch of merch that you can buy if you're in the market to do a little in-person Magic the Gathering this summer. And you get to vote for cards. We are, of course, undertaking that monthly project with Serum Visions. Invoke Calamity was the card that was voted. We've kind of been doing a little bit like a week check-in on the cards that finish second, third, and fourth. So even if your card doesn't win, we're going to talk about Showdown of the Skalds today in both of the formats. So yeah, if you want your voice to be heard there, that's the place to do it.
Exactly. It's not particularly just going through like 2 to 4, like specifically. It's just the voting was so close and people showed so much interest in these cards. And likely the same thing is going to happen next time. It felt like they deserve at least a bit of time in the spotlight, right?
Yeah, and of course, these are not just cards that people are pulling out of the ether. These are cards that we've thought about, right? I've puttered around with a bunch of different shells for Showdown the Skalds. It's super powerful, obviously, just like Invoke Calamity is. And cards that are powerful are always going to sort of, inspire the imagination.
Exactly. Powerful plus a little strange is exactly what gets us brewer going, right?
Absolutely. Then in addition to all that stuff on the Patreon, we are expanding out to YouTube. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, what are people going to see on YouTube?
Well, right now we are just getting a melange, like a bit of everything as we try to find exactly what people prefer. Dan has been uploading some videos, I have been uploading some leaks, trying to find a mixture of what people prefer, if commented games, if replays. We're trying to find a way, and we would love to hear suggestions on this, to upload a podcast itself. Because a lot of people prefer to listen on YouTube, and we would like to hear what would you like to see in the meanwhile. We tried with a league, but people felt like it was like too heavy, you know? Listening to a podcast plus watching a game of Magic becomes a bit too complicated to do both at once efficiently. So it's trying to find the mixture in there.
Yeah, Dan sent me a league of him playing my Bant Werewolves list in Pioneer, and there was no commentary. He had recorded, it sort of sounded like a Brian Eno, taking Tiger Mountain by strategy, 1975, like ambient sort of flowing sounds as you're watching, flashing in Nightpack Ambusher. So I don't know, maybe that's what the people are into. But yeah, that's the kind of stuff we need feedback on, right? If you don't like that, you're, opposed to Brian Eno for some reason, you weren't a Roxy Music fan, that's fine. You want to hear Dan's melodious description of all the misplays he's making. That's the feedback he needs. So yeah, any feedback people want to give on the YouTube videos, even, constructive criticism is very, very useful in this case.
Exactly. So, with that being said, first, thanks a lot to the new patrons. They really support us, they really keep us going. And let's get into a roundup for the week. We have a lot of news somehow this week.
Yeah, so the first big news was that Explorer, which has only existed for like 2 weeks, already had a ban. Actually had 2 bans. Winota Joiner of Forces was banned, and the 2 red mana instant counterspell.
Tibalt Trickery.
Yeah, Tibalt Trickery was also banned. Both of them, I think, just had bad play patterns in Best of 1. So all of Explorer somehow has to suffer for that reason. This is exactly why I was very skeptical of this format existing in Arena, and already we're seeing like crazy decisions, in my opinion, like being made.
Yeah, the biggest fear is those decisions eventually just getting into the real Pioneer, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like Explorer is not really a format, right? It's like the boyfriend that you have at home or whatever. But Arena is the money-making engine for WotC. So even though like it's not a real format, it probably generates a lot more resources for WotC than Pioneer does. And so therefore it probably has a lot more sway with the decisions that they're going to make. So yeah, I'm very alarmed as a Pioneer player that like somehow Arena's weird focus on like free to play encourages people to just get in games in Best of 1. Well, if you're going to just get in a bunch of games in Best of 1, you just can play a Tibalt Trickery deck or a Winota deck and just mulligan to the nuts and just, get enough wins that day to, check your box. And then somehow that means that the entire format gets altered. It's just, this is not the way.
I mean, Best of 1 is it's 2 huge differences, right? First of all, Best of 1, it's a completely different game from any axis you want to look at it. Like one of the essences of Magic is the sideboard. And secondly, the different platform you're playing. Arena and MTGO are practically 2 completely related games.
And let's just say, Best of 1 has not been a competitive Magic format of any kind for like 30 years.
Has it ever been?
No, that's the whole point, is the only place it's played competitively Best of 1 is just Arena, and it's just, again, because they have this model of free-to-play, they just want something that you can kind of spam decks. So, like, that shouldn't have anything to do with anything. Like, that should just have its own weird, just shuffle the format all the time. But, of course, you can't, because they're trying to soak you for wildcards, and people get upset. So the whole just feeds from a bunch of basic mistakes with Arena, and then it propagates forward to possibly infect the actual Pioneer format, the real format that's only played on MTGO.
That's the real fear. What they do in Explorer could matter much. I don't think anyone could care less about it. However, we have David here just trembling for his favorite format. Look what you did, Arena players. Look what you did.
Well, we'll see, right? We won't get mad ahead of time, but there's some writing on the wall that makes us a little nervous.
So, with Winota being banned in Explorer, I think a lot of people are just starting to wonder what would happen to Pioneer. Like, do people want these bans in Pioneer? I have read a lot of new agendas regarding the topic as a lot of people pour into the format due to the Pro Tour being announced. And we would love to hear what our favorite local player in Pioneer has to think about it.
Yeah, I think the default is that players that aren't invested in Pioneer only started playing it probably in the last couple months and then just, spam the same kind of deck all the time. they are very pro-ban, right? That's what you're getting from people that aren't invested, right? They start playing, and whatever deck that they want to play loses to Winota, or it loses to Lotus Field or whatever. And so the first thing that they do is they want to ban, and I think it's really unfortunate, right? So the people that have like built the format, built the metagame, they have ways to compete, and when you look at the top 8s, you don't see that it's dominated by Lotus Field. You don't see that it's dominated by Blue Red Phoenix, and you don't see that it's dominated by Winota. We know that the criteria that they ban on is really opaque right now. So yeah, I think my default position is I don't think they should ban anything, and if they want to do something to mix up the format, then I think they should unban cards.
Okay, so do you have like a specific order you would like to unban? And if so, just unbanning, right? No bans, and hope it shakes up in the correct way.
My proposal would be, well, I don't think you have to do anything. You don't have to ban or unban anything. I think the format's pretty balanced. You see actually a churn just like you did in Modern, where some week, Phoenix was good, but it's not multiple decks in the top 8 every challenge. If it's so easy to top 8 a challenge with Phoenix, it should just be full of people doing that, but it isn't, right? And the decks are actually good against each other. Winota is very good against Lotus Field. Blue-Red Xerox is very good against Winota. And, et cetera, et cetera. But the cards that I would unban is, first of all, I would just ban the companion mechanic. I'm just going to say this every time we talk about bans. It's the stupidest thing in the world.
What?
And then you could unban Luris.
Why you gotta do this? Why you gotta make me an enemy of? Why you gotta make me an enemy of your position? Like so fast. Why you gotta come forward and make yourself an enemy at the first moment of speaking? Now we're gonna say everything you say is wrong. Clearly, we need to ban everything in this format. Clearly, Pioneer is broken, and we can never trust anything David says.
It might be worth saying that there basically aren't companions at all in the format. You'll occasionally see Gigantha in a few of the blue-red lists. Gigantha's also played in the Ascendancy list, but it's actually pretty rare. And then there's a few Urian lists, but those are all actually quite bad. It's just a bad format for Urian right now.
The gall of this man. Just a personal attack after a personal attack. Can't believe it.
So, all right. Beyond the companion mechanic, I think you can unban the Looter Scooter, right? I don't think it's obvious that this card is better than Ledger Shredder. And I think it's quite obvious that this card is worse than Expressive Iteration, is worse than Mana Elf, is worse than Lotus Field, is worse than Winota. Even the logic when this card was banned was wild. The assertion was that mono black aggro was just like absolutely unbeatable. People couldn't do anything about it. And I didn't agree with it then. Like, it and Oko were in the same format together, and and it got banned first. Like, Oko was legal for multiple weeks after Smuggler's Copter was banned. So that tells you, like, the way that they were understanding the format then was very, very strange, right? There's no way that there's a format where Oko is fine and and Smuggler's Copter is not fine, right? That just doesn't compute, especially people that maybe only now, even younger players, just hear about, like, Oko's legend, like, oh man, this insane 3-mana Planeswalker. It's like, yeah, this card got banned way after this 2-mana 3/3 kind of flying artifact.
No, that was just a mistake. Like, there's no other explanation.
And one of the arguments that people had is because it's colorless, it goes in every deck, right? But I don't think that's true. I don't think that any of the Phoenix players would play it because they don't have enough creatures. In fact, decks with a lot of creatures, like lower the ground aggro decks that might play this, are really, really rare, right? In top 8s and challenges, you don't see a lot of decks that would play this card. So I think this card would actually open stuff up. We'd actually see mono black aggro again, possibly. Would it be maybe too good in like a Mardu Greasefang shell? Maybe, but Greasefang has 4 or 5 different builds, and the Mardu one maybe becomes the most popular, but we'd have to see it. This card was banned before a bunch of the common removal that's played right now, including March and Portable Hole, which actually get rid of it even when it's not a creature. I think this card is very reasonable to unban. I think it's significantly worse than a handful of cards that are currently legal, and I'm not 100% convinced that it's better than Ledger Shredder.
Okay, I think Ledger Shredder is better. I agree with that. Maybe not specifically in Greasefang due to a lot of additional synergies, but it seems like a good argument to justify the ban, right? Like, Ledger Shredder is doing 99% of what it does without requiring you to run a lot of creatures to support it.
Yeah, Ledger Shredder lets you play like Thoughtseize and Consider, right? Which are cards that certain builds of the whatever various lists want to play. This makes you play stuff, like creatures. You have to actually play like a 1/1/1, and then you have to play this on 2, and then you have to play a 3/3 on 3 or whatever. Like, those decks just don't exist, right? That just curve out like creature, this 3-drop, 4-drop. Yeah, I just think this is very reasonable. you'd have to show me that this card is actually worse than Mana Elf or Treasure Cruise or Expressive Iteration before I believe you.
Worse in the regard of more offensive to the format, not in quality card.
Well, even in quality card, I mean, what? Like, you're telling me I can play with 4 Expressive Iteration or I can play with 4 Smuggler's Copter. Like, which of those cards, what deck sounds more powerful in the abstract?
Yeah, of course. Expressive Iteration is always better. Yeah, okay. Looter Scooter is an argument I can really stand behind. I think they banned it mostly out of fear from a really early format where aggro was king. And that's not what the format is at the moment, like, at all. Cheap creature aggro is not what works in the format right now.
Yeah, that'd be the one card I would say. Then the other 2 cards do technically allow for combos, but I still think it allows for a variety of extra types of shells in the format. So the first one is Walking Ballista. This was played very commonly in a mono white combo deck with Heliod. But I mean, that is again a creature-based combo that's disrupted by all the removal. But it kills way, way slower than Winota, which is a creature-based combo that can kill you very quickly or create a board that will kill you very quickly. Also, now that March is legal, you actually have a way, like our Control or any deck playing white actually has a way to just get rid of Heliod, which didn't even exist before. So yeah, I just don't think that this card does bad things for the format. I actually think it basically creates that mono white list again. It gives tools to mono green, and I think you could probably make a like a Skalds deck good again, where you have an actual payoff, like something that really can like turbo out a game winning board if you kind of do your Skalds thing.
Yeah, Ballista is always the best player for those kind of decks, especially against creature decks. Ballista is the way to just say this game is over. A 6/6 Ballista is what's gonna put the nail on the coffin and just finish the game. Because it's both a creature that hits you for 12 or a board wipe.
Yeah. But, like, the big mana part of the format doesn't exist. So it's never going to be, you're not going to be able to play a 6/6 because you don't have, Urza lands or whatever.
No, also it's the only card I can think about.
But yeah, I mean, it's like, you look at the mono white list that people, it's a quote unquote combo list. It's like, look at the cards they were playing. Just the card quality is so bad. And you look at the format now, it's like, oh my god, they're playing Augury Owl, like on 4. Like, how am I ever going to beat this 3/3 that draws a card? It's like, I don't know, man. I think Phoenix or Winota can find a way if they tap out on turn 4 and play a Phantom monster that draws a card. I think they might be able to do it. I'd have to, double check the numbers on that one, but not Augury Owl. I'm saying the wrong card.
You're saying
it's 4 blue-white hybrid mana.
Yeah, 4 mana 3/3.
Augury Owl's 1 and a blue for a 1/1.
You're saying the 4 mana 3/3 from Eldraine.
Yeah.
Arcanist Owl.
Arcanist Owl, yeah.
That one. That's so low quality, but so much devotion.
So yeah, I mean, you're talking about a deck that was playing 4 of those. I'm just not a believer that Walking Ballista turning that deck into a combo deck is some sort of like format breaker. And I don't think it's that different or much harder or easier to interact with than the existing one with the book.
Yeah, the Angel one.
Yeah, the Angel book targeting the Mutavault. To me, this just seems like a very reasonable card. Again, because it's disrupted by creature removal, like push just always kills it, right? You're not having to play special cards to kill Walking Ballista. You just can do it.
Okay, yeah. Like the form, a lot of people complain about the ban the moment it came. I think what they were complaining about has become reality, which is the card. The combo was not as powerful as people think. It was more likely that it was more of a moment of the format is really new. People don't really know how to play it or what to expect, and this is the first thing that people came out with that was a consistent square combo deck, right? Besides the next card you're gonna mention, it was like the first ones to just go ahead.
Well, the other thing is how inconsistent it was, right? So at the time, the decks you could play were Lotus combo, mono white quote unquote combo with Walking Ballista, the inverter combo with Dig Through Time, and then like basically like a mono red, like aggro that was also hate, and then or like a mono black aggro. But the reality is, Lotus Field still is a combo. Like, it's unclear why that combo, which is way hard to interact with because it's really hard to target lands that are hexproof, like that's okay. But like a Walking Ballista, and Winota is functionally a combo deck, let's be honest, that has like a backup plan of ramping and playing like 4 and 5 drops, so you can't just be all in on the combo hate. Walking Ballista is a very similar card in my mind to Winota. It requires the white deck to play very low quality cards. It can win with the nut draw at a certain point. It actually is very weak to a bunch of removal. March is actually insane against it because it kills Heliod, or for 1 white mana just is a source to Plowshares of the Ballista. And another card I think they could unban on the same topic is Kethis. The Kethis combo wasn't even played when it got banned. It was very much a preemptive ban because, again, the stereotype of Pioneer was that it was very combo-centric, which was true, and they were just trying to get rid of the combos. Why Lotus Field just dodged the bullet at the time, I don't know. But Kethis is a weaker combo than Lotus that's also easier to disrupt.
And what happened, I think, with the Lotus Field, it's like it didn't dodge the bullet, they just fired the wrong round. Because if I'm not mistaken, they banned the Breach and hope it was enough. Underworld Breach, I think?
They banned the red enchantment that let you cast spells from...
So they fired at Lotus. They just fired the wrong bullet. They had to kill it. They had to kill it from like the roots, and they just thought maybe if we trim it a bit, it will be fine, and it wasn't, and that was their huge punishment.
Yeah, and I always laugh because I joked, I think, even that the week afterwards when I lost to Lotus Field, I was like, the thing about Breach is it was a deterministic kill, so you could throw down very comfortably, like, okay, they win. I know, I see the cards. But without it, they might not win.
So you have to sit there. It was like KCI in Modern, which is like...
Yes, exactly. So like, all right, I draw 3 and I discard 2 and untap 2 lands. Like, okay, I mean, you still might have bricked.
So keep going.
I draw 3 more. So Kethis gets hit by all the stuff we're already having to run on our sideboards to stop all the other combo decks. So Cage and Runestone, stop it. Stop you from playing cards from graveyard. Archon of Emeria, Damping Sphere, Deafening Silence, Rest in Peace, the Hearst Trespasser Go Blank, Pithing Needle. And then all the hate we're running for Winota also hits Kethis. So Grasp, Ray of Enfeeblement, Rending Volley, Fry, Ethergust, because Kethis is also green. All these cards are also good against Kethis. So I'm not saying that like Kethis adds positive play patterns, but they aren't more negative than Lotus, and it's actually way easier to disrupt. I mean, basically, I just named all the cards that should be in your sideboard. You just bring in 15 cards probably, even if you're not expecting to play Kethis. You're like, all right, I have these other Gusts in my sideboard to stop, Niv Mizzet and Winota, and then I've got, Rest in Peace for Phoenix and blah, blah, blah. It's like, Kethis just won't be a good deck.
I didn't even know Kethis. I'm not gonna lie. When I saw this list, I was like, wait, Kethis is banned? It seems like...
That's what people said when it was banned. It's like, my dad one time, this was a funny story, he came down while we were like having dinner and announced to the family he decided to stop drinking. And we were like, you don't drink. Like, what the hell? I mean, my dad is like, not a teetotaler, but he probably has like 2 glasses of rum a year. It's just like the craziest thing in the world. Like, what are you talking about? We just laughed so much. He's like, all right, well, I don't know. Like,
I gotta go drink some rum.
Yeah, like, what was it? Just an insane,
that's exactly how I felt. I was like, you're talking about, they should have banned Kethis. It's clearly not strong enough to be banned. And I'm just here like, it got banned? Seems like I never even saw that many deck lists when the format started. It was
never good. That's what, even when it got banned, people were like, wait, why? I mean, again, it was a preemptive thing. They just wanted to get rid of combo. If they thought they got rid of these other combos, this would be the best combo. We know that there are players that are really good at tweaking out combos, that love exploring combos. They would probably find a way to make Kethis a playable deck. Again, that version of the Kethis deck would be way, way weaker than Winota. So the combo itself is worse. It's harder to assemble. And then once it's assembled, it's actually much easier to disrupt. And I think you even have to play lower quality cards, right? That 1 of blue, 1/3 that mills you when you cast legendary spells. Like, that's just a bad card. It dies to Fatal Push or whatever. So again, I will say that the argument that a person could make, that if we want to steel man the argument against this, is if Kethis is good, then the ban was a mistake, right? And the play patterns of Kethis are bad. And if it's really bad, if it's so bad it won't see play, then what's the point of unbanning it, right? So there's very little to be gained. At the same time, like, I just don't think cards should be banned just because someone at one point thought they were banned. Like, you could unban Kethis and not see it in a 5/0 dump for months, would be my prediction.
I agree. Like, the only way... I'm not quite sure what the Kethis combo was, so I'm just talking more as a thought rather than as something specific. But how annoying was the combo potentially? Like, was it like KCI levels of annoying?
Yeah, it was, because you had to cast Mox Amber out of your graveyard, and then it triggers a thing that mills, and then you'd mill all the way down. And
yeah, but it wasn't deterministic, right?
Sometimes it could be, like if you had the 2 Ambers, but otherwise you were just like milling, hoping to hit more, whatever.
I think sometimes like how annoying it is to play against has like that's the argument they gave for KCI. That's the argument they give to keep punishing Fireban. Sometimes it's just being annoying is enough. Not trying to benefit it for players that want to play it. Let's just not make suffer their 500.
Yeah, but to me, it's just like they play it, they cast their first thing from the graveyard, I fry it, which I'm already playing, like I said, because I have to kill Winota. Like, all right, that's dead. The annoying turn is over. Whatever. Trespasser, exile their graveyard, start beating them down. It's like, after enough people O2 with Kethis, they're like, well, playing this worse Lotus Field for no reason doesn't feel very good.
Okay, so we have talked about the cards you would like to unban that you think potentially they should do nothing, but if they were to do something, that would be the ideal move. However, most of the talk is about bans, and people want bans, people want blood, people love a good witch hunt. So which are the witches of the format?
So I think the two decks that people think about needing to be banned are the Lotus Field deck, which has definitely gotten a lot better with the new, tutorable, uncounterable, unthought-seizable land, right, that blows up the common hate.
Yeah, Bosseshu removing anything that's not a creature becomes annoying.
Yes, and so that's why you've actually seen a lot of white creatures become very good, right? Thalia, Rydane, the 2/3 that makes their non-basic lands come into play tapped, and you can only cast one spell a turn.
Archon of Emeria
Is actually better than Eidolon of Rhetoric, because Eidolon of Rhetoric being an enchantment is somehow a huge negative.
Yeah.
Because of Boseiju. So I would only ban, if it was me, Hidden Strings, because I think that basically kills the deck. And it lets me continue to go like 2-3, 3-2 with various Teferi brews with Lotus Field. And I think the other players that are getting donated, my like 45% win rate would also appreciate that. Like, just leave Lotus Field around. Let the degens, like the people who are still going to play the combo no matter what, they'll play it and it'll be bad. We save a bunch of slots in our sideboard. And, I can still play a terrible Lotus Field deck if I really want to.
So you're more of the idea that rather than just outright killing the combo, nerfing it enough, it's gonna be only a psycho thing.
Yeah, and I just think Lotus Field is a cool card. Like, if you're not doing the stupid thing with it, it's interesting with Brought Back, it's interesting with Teferi, it's interesting with the 1/3 flying white creature that counters triggers unless you pay 2 more. It's interesting with Blood Sun. There's just a lot of like fair ways to do it, and all those decks are a little inconsistent, right? Because they're much better when they draw the 1 piece plus the Lotus Field. Sometimes it's you draw the Lotus Field, not enough lands, etc. So that's the kind of trade-off. The version that exists now is like super consistent. It's going to kill you on turn 4 or 5. It's going to often kill you on turn 5 through 1 hate piece. So yeah, if people don't like it, I understand. Obviously, I've complained about it a lot. I just think like either unban some of these other faux combos that would give people like you could like being able to play a mono white list that has the Walking Ballista finish is going to be really good against Lotus Field and really bad against fair decks. Right? Yeah. So that mono white list is going to be awesome against Lotus Field. You can play all these white creatures that just hate it out, and you have this combo finish that they don't interact with. But it's going to be tough for that deck to compete with like blue-white control or black-red mid-range because they're just so disruptive, and then their clock is fast. So either like legalize some of these other interesting cards, or I think you're going to want to, I think, and I expect, again, I expect them to ban something from Winota and something from from the Lotus Field deck before the Pro Tour.
Okay.
And I think they'll actually just ban Lotus Field, and I think they're going to ban Winota. When Winota was first in the format, I always laughed at Dan. I said I knew my deck was bad if I lost to it, because I think I went like 22-0 for a while. It was just all in on the Winota, and it's been playing various versions, and it just keeps getting like a little bit better, right? First, it was Lotus Cobra. That was the first card that you play that Lotus Cobra turn 2 after they kill your mana elf. Turn 3, you could just play Winota attack, get your trigger.
Yeah, that was like that was when people realized how to actually play the deck.
Yeah, and Lotus Cobra was a new card, right? It wasn't a card that they had access to before. And then all of a sudden, I think people really have to learn about what come into play abilities are. Like, Innkeeper seems like it's worse than Lotus Cobra. It's just better. You always get the ramp. And then you get the Fable and Chariot, right? So the fair playing gets a lot better. Your ability to find Winota is a lot higher. And again, these come into play abilities, people don't really get them. I saw a lot of quote-unquote pros who are quote-unquote experts in Pioneer talking about how Galagreeters was going to be a big upgrade for Winota. We're weeks in, no one ever is playing Galagreeters because it doesn't do anything when it comes into play. People just like don't get how Winota functions. The way they talk about the deck is just so strange. But each of these minor upgrades has led the deck from being like a very, very mediocre deck that had to get super lucky to a very, very fine deck. Even when it doesn't draw Winota, it can win lots of games where it just turn 2, turn 3, turn 4, and you've added a bunch of power to the board. And maybe I felt like I could never tap out because I'm worried about Winota, but you're like hitting me with Voice of Resurgence and hitting me with Chariot.
Yeah, you have to constantly be on your toes due to it. It works in a really similar way. I have made this comparison a lot. We notice the Yawgmoth of Modern, of Pioneer, in that they're just playing a seemingly nerfed aggro deck that all of a sudden can combo you out. Like, you have to keep on your toes ready for the combo. They're playing a lot of resilient creatures, and if you keep playing around the combo, you're gonna die to the beatdown. And that's the perfect mixture, like, it dances in.
Yeah, and the fact that the commonly played removal is not able to kill Winota is the really problematic thing, right? There's no flash free elemental. Fatal Push is very rarely turned on. That's one of the reasons why, I was the first person or one of the first person to push Deadly Dispute in the format. When it caught on, it's just like, it always gave you these crazy outs to just stop the Winota, like, nut draws, because you'd always have a treasure lying around. And you can draw to your push. Like, you just have these desperation turns, and like, if you kill Winota the turn they play it, and then now all of a sudden their keep looks really loose, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what we were talking about. They're playing coming to play creatures in order to be able to play around removal, but if you just time walk their 4 mana turn with a 1 mana spell, all of a sudden the plan really collapses. Like, it's a really, really tempo negative play to play Winota and have it die. That's why it's unplayable in Modern.
Yeah, exactly. So Winota is a card that warps the format. You see huge amounts of sideboard space dedicated to it, right? Like Grafdigger's Cage, a bunch of the cards we just named that are very good against Kethis are all cards, we don't have to list them all, but you need to play some of those versions. A lot of the mana bases I build probably have a little bit worse mana just so they can play a few Fabled Passages just to give me some outs to hit Winota. So yeah, it's frustrating to play against. As somebody who really like enjoyed smoking Winota for a long time, now it's like, when your little sibling like grows up and they're bigger than you and they're like, kicking the shit out of you and you're playing like football in your backyard. American football, you son of a bitch, not Argentinian football.
Don't you dare! I thought you were gonna say the S word. And so you come into my house, you insult my Orion, you insult my companion rule, and then you attack my national sport? I don't even play football. But if you dare call it soccer, we're gonna have a problem in our hands.
So I think you need to ban those cards in concert, because Winota actually keeps Lotus Field in check. It's really good against it. And then I think if you ban Winota, then you need to ban something from the blue-red Xerox list. And I think I don't know exactly what to ban there. So right now, I think most decks play 3 to 4 Treasure Cruise, and then maybe one other Delve spell. Often it is the turn spell, right? If they're taking a bunch of... So I don't know if just banning Treasure Cruise is enough. Like, would they just play like 3 Temporal Trespass and like 2 Dig Through Time? Like, yeah, it's a little worse, but not much. I do think that Treasure Cruise is much better than Dig in the format, and it's interesting how little Dig Through Time is played. Most of the control decks don't play any, which is always really surprising to me.
Not playing Dig Through Time in control is something that really surprises me, or Treasure Cruise even. But I think the biggest thing here is, from what you have said so far and what I have heard most people say, people really want Lotus and Winota to disappear from the format entirely, and Xerox decks to only get nerfed. Like, because the other 2 will get removed and want it to reign supreme, so it's like a mixture of eliminate the top 2 threats and make sure the third one doesn't get out of hand.
Yeah, and so it's interesting to me, like, I don't know what I would do there. Again, my default position is to not ban anything and unban. But if you made me, like, I have to make blue-red worse, I would for sure ban Treasure Cruise, and I just don't know if that actually affects the deck that much. Like, if I have to play 2 Dig Through Time and 3 Temporal Trespass, I lose some percentage points. Like, the blue actually ends up mattering, maybe, because they are playing Pathways. Is actually Expressive Iteration better than the other spells? Like, if I ban Treasure Cruise and Expressive Iteration and just leave Dig and Temporal Trespass? I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting question.
It's quite shocking to think about the fact that banning Expressive Iteration is so much more painful than banning Dig Through Time. The fact, like, in a format less powerful than Modern, the fact you can say, okay, banning Expressive Iteration is more harmful than banning Dig Through Time just shocks me to no end.
Yeah, and the thought was like, oh, if you ban Dig Through Time, you hurt these other decks. It's like, most control decks don't play Dig, or if they do, they play maybe 1. And then like Lotus Field, which is a deck, I don't mind making weaker. I've seen the best list don't play any. Yeah. So at first I couldn't believe it. Like, oh, they're only playing 2. Yeah, all right. And then it's just like, oh, we're not going to play any. Like, it's like, what the hell?
They just cut it out, add a Trespass and another 2 for 1, and they're fine. It's not going to destroy them.
I think if you ban Lotus Field, then you need to ban something from Winota, and then you need to ban something from the Xerox list. And I think those are all like a cascading series of decisions. So maybe Pioneer is better without them. Again, I know that they don't have the guts to do this, but what I would propose to them is they should schedule like a big celebratory weekend with a bunch of tournaments with real prizes with the proposed band list and see what the decks look like, see what the format looks like.
That would be great.
And then if it doesn't look that sweet, just like, I don't like, again, I'm a scientist. I like the data. So it's like, let's run a thing and then whatever. The rewards are enough that you know all the best players will play. And so Canister will be there with whatever list he's going to play, and Aspiring Spike and whoever your Pioneer, Claudio. And like, all right, if 5 color like Niv Mizzet wins and Blue Red Phoenix doesn't even get near the top 32 with whatever ban, it's like, okay, that's too far. Like the levers are so complicated because you're going to have to ban a bunch of stuff at once. You get stuff where like Kathis is banned and nobody even knows it.
Yeah.
And I think they're at a point where if they let it go too far, they're going to ban too much at once again. And it's like someone's going to join later and like, why the hell is Temporal Trespass banned in this format? Like,
yeah, I get where you're coming from, but I just hope, like, what I have heard from most people is some sort of ban is almost needed. However, you're right in that most people asking for bans are people new to the format, like the new wave of players that are just coming a few weeks and maybe they will get used to it, and that's fine. But let's see what the future holds. There was once a talk in Twitter with I can't remember exactly who it was. It was from Wizards of the Coast saying that they had considered and they were open to the suggestions of for 1 week having a modern league with specific bans or specific unbans. So like it was an open possibility, like it wasn't something completely unheard of. And I think that's sort of the perfect thing, right? Leagues with 2 or 3 different bans and maybe 1 challenge, like really, it's not really time consuming, it's not resource consuming, and it's allowing people to see what the format would be like.
Yeah, and it's something you can do easily on Magic Online that you can't do on Arena, right? Because Arena requires you to craft these things and then they have to refund them. Magic Online, you just go to a rental service, all right? I put 4 Smuggler's Copters in my thing. They're only worth whatever, 2 ticks. I don't even know what they're worth. And it's like, all right, okay, they are too good. If someone tells me in their heart of heart, if you unban Smuggler's Copter, Mono Black is going to dominate the format, I'm just like, this is a guy who's telling you that Gala Greeters was going to be great in Winota. That's what I'm telling you. So if you think Gala Greeters is great in Winota, then you should definitely continue to insist on Smuggler's Copter being banned.
With that, we're leaving the Pioneer talk for a second, and we're heading to what's new for the whole world of Magic.
Yes.
First of all, this weekend we have the new Capena Championship. So one of the last online Pro Tours is coming to us this weekend. I'm not gonna lie, I just knew the date because I had heard some friends or like people I know from Twitter discussing they were testing. But besides that, I never got into online Pro Tours. They just cannot. They cannot catch my attention long enough.
Yeah, the game itself, I think, is just not attractive online. The narrative, the people involved, there's something missing. I'm not 100% sure what it is.
I couldn't tell you what it is. Like, I cannot say it's bad because it wouldn't be truth. I don't know. It doesn't get me. Like, seeing paper play always was so much more tangible for me, and maybe that's a thing. And ignoring that, I think practically everybody that hears us is almost on the same boat. Some people are going to listen to it. If they do, please send me any great moments. I love to see the specific great moments, but I'm not going to watch the whole thing. And something quite a bit more charming is Commander Legend Battle for Baldur's Gate. So we got Commander Legends 2 coming up, which is the Draft Commander product.
Yeah, I mean, also, Baldur's Gate is a Dungeons & Dragons video game that those of us who are old like me remember playing. Baldur's Gate 2 is so awesome. It's one of the awesome role-playing games of all time. All these characters that are referenced are all from the either a Dungeons & Dragons product, from the actual Baldur's Gate 1 or Baldur's Gate 2.
Or Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah, or Baldur's Gate 3.
You just went like, people old like me, and I'm like, I have been playing Baldur's Gate 3, which is 2 years old. You don't have to be old. You just need to have the new game.
But Baldur's Gate 2 is the classic, right? That's the one that like put everything on the map. Like it's the antecedent from which a bunch of other like games and way that people play online go from. So
yeah, it's a Diablo 2 of the Baldur's Gate series. It's the one that made it big.
Empire Strikes Back.
It's Empire Strikes Back of the D&D series. This comes with, first of all, some lovely cards. Second of all, some lovely mechanics, which I would love to just slowly go into because they're particularly interesting. The first one, which is choose a background. So this is a commander-only mechanic which allows you to play, if your commander, which is a creature, has choose a background, it allows you to have a secondary commander, which is an enchantment, that has the background type. So for example, you can have a Lulu Loyal Holyphant and a background called Raised by Giants, which makes your commander creatures be 10/10s, and are Giants in addition to its other types, as your two commanders.
So the background card also is in the command zone and may be cast from the command zone?
Exactly. It's exactly that. You start a game with two commanders, one being a creature and one being a legendary enchantment, which has the background type. The creature has to have the choose a background in its ruling, and we have some beautiful creatures. We have an elephant ancient, everybody. Lulu the Loyal Holyphant. And the best bear in the history of Magic, because it has so many... It is the questing beast of bears.
Yes, that's right. It has a lot of abilities.
And then we have Take Initiative, which is so unnecessarily complex. So a lot of creatures have, or spells have, when it does something, when it enters the battlefield, you take the initiative. It's the Monarch of Baldur's Gate 2. Once you take the initiative, so the moment you trigger it, or at your upkeep, you go into the Undercity, which is an initiative-specific dungeon. This is a dungeon you cannot enter without enter the dungeons cards, only via the initiative. So whenever a card makes you take the initiative, or in your upkeep, you go down into the Undercity. So first step, you search for a basic land to your hand, then you get to scry 2 or put counters, then you get to go to a creature, make a treasure token, or opponent loses 5 life. Second to last is draw a card of 4/1 token, or finally, look at the top 10 cards, put a creature from among them into play, it gets hexproof until your next turn, and it enters with 3 counters. All in all, we have a dungeon crawling monarch that gets taken via combat as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why it's phrased as take the initiative. Obviously, you're specifically having to venture into the Undercity. I really liked the idea of dungeons, but I thought that the actual execution was poor. I like the idea of a much more powerful dungeon with more restrictive venturing.
Yeah.
I think if they had just made the dungeons a little bit differently, if they had had actual interesting trade-offs in some of the decisions that you made, yeah, you can see already in what's the arena format where they altered all the cards.
Alchemy.
Yeah, you can see they were like, they like that tacit acknowledgement, like we actually fucked up, we really blew it with the way that we designed the adventure cards, right? They had to tweak all these casting costs, they had to do all this stuff, and it still isn't that powerful. And venturing just doesn't feel that fun or different because there's very few choices to make. Actually, this one actually has a bunch of powerful effects. Like even the first entrance, just getting a basic land, is so much better than the first venture in any other place. It'd be cool if you, like, for instance, had a dungeon with something really good on the first venture, and then the effects got progressively worse, and then the final one was like very negative for you, but the ventures aren't May.
Okay.
So you'd like draw a card with your first venture, and then the second one is, whatever, scry 1, and then finally the last one's like you take 4 damage or something. I'm just making it like there's all these things they could have done, and instead they like basically made two that were very similar, and one that gave you a little bit more, and then the one that had the 2 paths, but the negative path was so negative it was not worth it to get a 4/4 faster. It's like 4/4s are 2 mana now in modern Magic. So I like the idea, but still just I don't know. It feels like they just can't get it right.
And in this one, this one is gonna get a bit annoying because it's like the Monarch, so they take it in combat and it triggers on upkeep instead of end step. So there's gonna be games where we're gonna have to track the initiative and the monarchy. They just went with some convoluted stuff. And finally, we get Baldur's Gate, which has amazing flavor text. Of course I know what eponymous means. It's a little horse. Freeze, gate card. Baldur's Gate, legendary land, gate. Which taps for colorless, or you tap 2 and tap it itself, and you add X mana where X is the number of gates you control. So it's like the Gate Lord in a gate, in Baldur's Gate.
Yeah, it comes in untapped, which is already super awesome in the Gates deck. And very few deck lands that can do that. And then it's like Cabal Coffers, I guess. Cabal Coffers for Gates. I mean, it's...
Do the new gates enter tap?
I don't know.
They printed 10 new... They are coming up with 10 new gates. 5 new gates, which is they just tap for your color. Like, they tap for one color and you choose the other one. That's how it works. I think then they're tapped, yeah. So there's the other cycle of gates. So we have like 15 gates for your Baldur's Gate commander deck. Finally, we have... Well, not finally. Last 2 topics. The Warhammer 40k commander decks have been spoiled. There's a lot of new cards. A lot of people really excited. A lot of people already complaining about them. Because we Magic players will have to complain. I'm happy.
Absolutely.
I'm happy for them. I'm also happy for Lord of the Rings, which is like the same group of people. You hate both or you like both. No middle point. And the new art for Fabricate looks insanely good. I love people complaining because Blood for the Blood God has an exclamation mark in the name. Such a nitpick. So many people complaining.
Yeah, that's very strange. But to your point, I mean, that's why Wizards probably just doesn't give a shit what people say, because it's like, oh, you're complaining about that? Like, how are we to differentiate that complaint from like, oh, you're kind of rinsing us on these arena, economy? Like, well, we're just hearing complaints from everybody, and like, we can't make anyone happy if they're going to complain about an exclamation mark. Why even like gesture towards fixing the other real problems?
And then we have Double Masters coming, Brennan is confirmed, a lot of really interesting reprints, only reprints, double the price, double the rares. Dominaria United is coming second week of September, so we have a long time coming till the next standard expansion. And the most important part, I think, the game day promos from July look amazingly good.
Yeah, they're beautiful. So every player gets a Flame Slash. Top 8 players get a really beautiful Archmage's Charm. And if you win, you get to take home a very, very sweet Dark Confidant. I'm a little ambivalent about, speaking of Magic players, always complaining. I don't like that they reprint cards that were, designed with someone in mind, right? I don't like that they printed a new Meddling Mage without, Chris Picula being there. I wouldn't like if they printed a new Avalanche Rider without whoever was on there.
I think, so I'm gonna be the David in this chat. The fact you don't remember who is in Avalanche Rider makes it so the whole claim. I mean, I know what you mean. I know cards are designed based on someone, but they have their card. My only complaint is Dark Confidant wasn't saved in Lord of the Rings and it's Grima Wormtongue.
Oh.
That's my only complaint.
I like that. And if you want to play like Jun from 6 years ago, this Dark Confidant is like still modern playable.
It's still modern legal, everybody. Also Flame Sash.
It's absolutely modern legal. So Flame Slash used to see some play.
Yeah, in the year of our Lord 2014, Flame Sash was a modern staple.
So yeah, if you want to relive what modern was like in the dying years of the Obama presidency, I would highly recommend going to Battle in the Stored Championships in July. The Archmage's Charm especially is super sweet.
It looks beautiful. The Teferi Scepter plus the Teferi face on the side.
Yeah, Teferi's back there looking like a badass. Everything about it.
What a lot of people might have been expecting, don't worry everybody, we have the timestamp. If someone wanted to check this, they could have skipped here. I feel no embarrassment and I feel no guilt for them. Showdown of the Skalds. So, Showdown of the Skalds was the third card, I think, in the monthly project voting. A lot of people were really interested in it. I loved the card a long time ago. I never thought it was gonna do well because why would it? It's beautiful, elegant, and simple, which is like the opposite of Brewer Dream. But here we are. And of course, if you're gonna start with Pioneer, first I think we have to read the card.
Yeah, Showdown of the Skalds is 2 colorless, a white, and a red for an enchantment saga. The first saga or lore counter exiles the top 4 cards of your library from the game. You may play them this turn. Until the end of your next turn, I'm sorry. The second lore counter says that whenever you cast a spell, you must put a +1/+1 counter on a creature. And the third lore counter says the exact same thing. So you get to play a 4-mana sorcery speed, draw 4, sort of, and you have to use those cards that turn in the next.
Exactly.
So it's not always great to play on turn 4 because you often want to get, the 2 lands you're going to hit from there. And if you have too many clunky spells, this is the big thing that I found. If you have too many clunky spells and you don't have creatures in play, you really don't get as much out of the Showdown as you expect to.
Showdown requires you to build your deck in a way that you're more than likely gonna be able to play at least 3 cards you're about to get. So you need a not remarkably high curve, you cannot play really reactive spells like Counterspell or such, or fill your deck with reactive spells because you're gonna be playing against a Sorius control and hit Triple Strangle and be like, this was a mistake. And then you need to have enough creatures where the second and third step are gonna be relevant. Ideally, if you're playing a low-cost deck, you're playing 2 or 3 spells on your turn 5 or 6, and that allows you to put 2 or 3 extra counters, which is what makes the card definitely worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because a 4-mana draw 4 would be playable, but that's not what this is. You're probably only going to get 2 to 3 cards out of it most of the time.
Exactly. So, and if I'm gonna get 2 or 3 cards for 4 mana, I need the additional upside. So where does that additional upside come for you in Pioneer, David? What do you do to get us there?
So I've been really, really fascinated by the ability to play more hate cards in the main deck. We talked earlier about how the format is kind of allegedly has degenerate decks. And I think a better way of saying that is that the actual proactive plans have all been determined. We know what they are. And so what you need to be building, and I've been really inspired by the Orzhov mid-range list that I've seen floating around in the format. You want a way to take all these cards that aren't that good, and in the matchups where they're good, you have them in your main deck, right? So I'm main decking 4 Containment Priest. I'm main decking 2 Eidolon of Rhetoric. I'm main decking Archon of Sun's Grace. This card is really good against mono red, right? So you have all these cards that are amazing in certain matchups, but then what do you do in other matchups? Well, they're all bodies. So Showdown of the Skalds makes your Containment Priest into a threat. Just what you want is just a card in play. Same with Eidolon of Rhetoric. Shepherd of the Flock is a card that people kind of took too early. It's a body to absorb counters, and it's also a card that puts Showdown of the Skalds back in your hand.
Okay.
It also does a bunch of other interesting stuff, like let's say you have they play a 2-drop, you flash in Containment Priest on their end of turn, right? You're not playing Winota, so Containment Priest isn't a great card. You can Chain of Rocks their creature, and then use your Shepherd to blink your chain back to your hand. They don't get their creature back, so it's functionally like a 1-mana removal spell.
Okay, and same with the Tension Sphere. Okay, I like that.
Yeah, exactly. I started actually with this deck playing there's a 3 white enchantment. When it or any other enchantment comes into play, you blink a non-enchantment permanent until end of turn. Yeah. Yep. I started with that, but that was too clunky. But the Shepherd of the Flock, Showdown of the Skalds, is like a built-in card advantage engine that you want anyway. But it also functions like with your quote-unquote hate bear to turn your good removal into insane removal. And then just playing a bunch of other cards are just like value. Like Spirited Companion is a very good card just by itself. Like a 2-mana 1/1 that draws is playable. With Nico Aris, like blinking it back to your hand, making it unblockable, that is interesting. With Archon of Sun's Grace, it gets better. With Showdown of Skalds, again, it's just a body that absorbs counters. Same with Knight of the White Orchid, right? Like you play Knight on the draw on turn 3, you get to 4 mana. Well, the problem with Knight is like, it doesn't actually let you play a 4-drop then. All you can do is play another 2-drop. We've got a ton of 2s, and you actually want to play Showdown of the Skalds with your 5th land drop coming. Yeah. So it actually curves into it perfectly on the draw, and on the draw is when Showdown of the Skalds is at its worst, because you play it on turn 4, right? That's a bad turn if you're behind. So Knight actually plays very well into that. It goes 2 2-drops on your turn 3 on the draw into, on your turn 4, you play Showdown with a land drop coming, and a body in theory, and play it with Knight and maybe another 2-drop. And then I'm playing Fable of the Mirror Breaker because it's an enchantment, right? It triggers Archon, and then it, again, it's that shuffle. All right, Chain of the Rocks is bad in this matchup, so is Eidolon. All right, they're going in the bin. We're drawing something else, and I'm finding whatever the good card is.
Yeah, but that's not a 3-drop you have to sell me on.
Which one do you like? You're not a believer in Nico Aris?
You can sell me on Eidolon because you said it's good versus Lotus. You can sell me on the Detention Touch split, as Touch is also good to get rid of some stuff for some time. Touch can only exile creatures, right?
Or artifacts.
No, I mean with the cycle? Or there are also artifacts? Okay, it's both also the cycle. Why can't it exile enchantments? So, sell me on Nico Aris.
All right, Nico Aris is a card I want to try out for 2 reasons. One, I like the ability to blink value 2-drops. So, like on the play, if I play Spirited Companion into Nico Aris plus, and I get Spirited Companion back into my hand, that's just a reasonable thing to do. 2, if I have Nico Aris in play, again, when we talk about bad turn 4s, like just playing Archon of Sun's Grace and not having an enchantment sucks. Nico Aris minuses to make an enchantment that turn.
Okay.
And then in all your value matchups, if you draw it in the late game, like all this extra mana, so we have Knight of the White Orchid, we have Fable of the Mirror Breaker making treasures. We just play it for a Jillion with an Archon in play, and we can't lose to Mono Red or Phoenix. We just make like 6 2/2 flying Pegasi.
Okay. Now I'm gonna say my only real problem with Nico Aris, which is the same problem I have with the Tension Sphere. Which is the same problem I discussed with Danny with your last when we were discussing Luxior. Why do you hate 2-color decks, David? Why? Why was your Jeskai Luxior beatdown Jeskai? Why is this blue?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point. I actually started out experimenting with this without red. It was a white-blue list, but I like the red cards more. Nico Aris is not a card I've ever played, except for during our Nico Aris week, which Dan was like weirdly in love with this card. I know it's a card that Zan Syed has had some good luck with in Standard, so it's more of an experiment. I will say that Knight of the White Orchid does allow us to splash blue very easily, and I was going to play a Triomes no matter what. I was going to play 4 Triomes, so it could be a white-red green or white-red whatever. But if I feel like I already have the free Triomes from the Knight basically, so a 3rd color is reasonable, and we only have 3 blue cards, so it's not like I'm going to be like hosed out of the color that matters very often.
My only problem with Nico is not the card itself, it's the fact it's double blue.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And it might be bad. So, I mean, it's easy enough to cut. You could cut the Nico RS. You could not play Detention Sphere. You could just play white-red.
Yeah. So I think this is a great way to start. And if you ever notice any problem with mana or enter 2 tap, I think this can really swiftly change 2 autos.
Yeah, absolutely.
The sideboard does get hurt because I love having access to stuff like Domin Speedo and Ergas at the sideboard. I think that's the biggest problem with going into autos.
Yeah, we'll talk about this on our next podcast, but I played a white-black tokens list, splashing just blue for Rafine, and was like, oh man, I'm really hurting my mana to do this. And said like Rafine was by far the best card in the deck, and the Dovin's Vetols in the sideboard are just insane. They're so good against everything. So that was another thing here. I was just like, man, I really want to play Dovin's Veto on the sideboard. It's good against mono. It's good against like a lot of the aggro decks. Like it's awesome against mono green. It's actually good against Phoenix. It's playable against mono red if you like. But it also like helps all your combo and control matchups. So again, you don't have to play Nico Aris. To your point, the mana is really tough there. But splashing blue is pretty easy if you're gonna play for Knight of the White Orchid. You could just play the 1 Detention Sphere main and no other blue card, and then just sideboard the Vetoes in like a Shark Typhoon and a Gust, which I have here.
Yeah, that's something I would be a lot more comfortable with instead of going for a really heavy double blue. Just having access to blue in the sideboard, having access to like maybe the Detention Spheres, which are amazing with Containment Priest. Like I just picture going, I don't know, turn 3, my opponent gets back some Phoenixes, they tap down, I go. I mean, you can just Containment Priest a Phoenix, right? Before they enter, so don't need to do the Detention Sphere stuff. I'm just selling myself out of it. I sold myself into the Detention Sphere and then I sold myself out of it. It was like an instant mutation.
The other thing that's cool is, and you have to be conscious of this in your own list, Containment Priest actually gets a flipping Fable, right? It gets any flipping enchantment.
Oh.
The creature comes into play in exile. So we get to control if we have Containment Priest in play or not. We can Shepherd the Flocket, etc. But I don't think people realize that. I think you're going to get a bunch of people where their Fable flips and they're just like, oh, what happened?
Okay, that's going to hurt with your own Kiki, so that's something to have into consideration.
Yep. So the other thing is, like, Shriver loves Nico Aris. It was like his favorite card. He was so bummed we didn't even get to do a full week on it. So just getting like one screenshot of it actually being good, that's worth having terrible mana. I'm going to say that right now.
I think it's a card I had always wanted to test, but I never had, I'm gonna say it, the courage, instead of what I was thinking about, to do it.
the foolish vanity.
Exactly, so I never went for it. I will eventually try it, and this seems like the perfect build to just give it a try.
Yeah, and you don't have to play it on turn 3, right? You just play something else.
Especially because it has the X, so like there's actually incentive to play it later.
Absolutely. You want to play it right either right before or right after you resolve an Archon. That's its main function.
Post Archon, it seems like the dream, right? Like turn 4 Archon, turn 5 Nico, have 3 bodies in play to protect it.
Well, then you get to minus it to make another one.
You get, yeah, okay.
So yeah, it's just it's insane specifically with Archon. When I had Skybind, it was also like play it, like blink all their creatures if you have a Containment Priest in play, but that just seemed a little too
many pieces.
Too many pieces, exactly. All right, enough of my nonsense. Enough of Pioneer. Let's talk about Modern.
Okay.
You are somebody who has been a huge advocate for this card in Modern. You've tried in a bunch of different shells. Walk us through your first one here.
So, what I went for 3 different deck lists is because they are using Showdown of the Skalds in 2 different ways mostly. This one uses it in a way, and the other 2 force it on another avenue. This first deck list is Enigmatic Incarnation. A card I think everyone knows I completely love. I have always been enamored by it. And Enigmatic Incarnation, 4-mana enchantment. On your end step, you might sacrifice an enchantment and you get a creature that costs 1 more. So in this deck, what you're using Showdown of the Skull for is not because of its second and third part like in the other deck, like in Pioneer. You're using it because it's an enchantment that costs 4 with an amazing ETB. So it allows you either to dig for your Enigmatic and then sacrifice it to get something that stabilizes your board like a Fury. Something really common was actually going turn 3 or 4, Showdown of the Skulls with an Utopia Sprawl into finding your Enigmatic and turn 4 or 5, playing Enigmatic and sacrificing it to get a Fury, which allows you to stabilize practically any board, right?
And Fury getting even maybe 1 extra +1/+1 counter with Double Strike is a major threat in addition to stabilizing the board.
That's gonna help you win a lot of games. So in this deck, what you're doing is you have a lot of enchantments that have ETBs: Omen of the Forge, Omen of the Seas, Abundant Growth, Dress Down, and well, Showdown of the Skulls as your top end that allows you to find creatures with the Enigmatic Incarnation. So that's the plan in this deck, in the Enigmatic pile.
Yeah, I love a lot of the creatures you have here too. So I love always having the one Glasspool Mimic. You can always tutor for the clone. You can tutor for Land Hate because you have a Magus of the Moon. You can tutor for a Charming Prince, which I love because you have all these come into play abilities. And then you have the Renegade Rallier combo with the 2-drops. And then your 5s are just the free elementals and a 1 Urian main.
Exactly. And you practically never got Urian. Most of the time you just want. That's, I think, the biggest problem with Breach Elementals. It's that they are so good. Besides the fact that you can cast them for free, they are almost worth their mana, right? Because a 4-mana Solitude would be amazing.
Right.
Like, without the Vogue, it would just be a playable card. I think that's the biggest aspect of why they are so powerful. And also, so Showdown of the Skull has a second huge upside in Modern, which is most of Modern decks are creature-based, and the pitch elementals in Boros colors are extremely reactive. So a lot of the time, you just, even if you have no land drop, you go 4-mana Showdown of the Skull, try to find a Solitude or a Fury, and you cast it for free while exiling a card from your hand. So the Showdown gets you back the card advantage while allowing you to dig for free spells that you can cast from exile.
Yeah, like much more tempo positive than the Pioneer version because there's no free spells you get off it. So the turn you play Showdown, you're not just tapping out and doing nothing just to get advantage next turn.
Exactly. There's a good chance you're going to find your pitch elementals and just have your proactive value play you need.
So you're only playing 1 Fury and 3 Solitude, so just the Fury is just there as a tutor target.
Yeah, because you don't have as many red spells, and also Solitude plus Ephemerate, it tends to be a lot better.
Right, okay.
Yeah, this is also an old build, I think. There have been some changes made. Especially the fact in the last build we're playing a lot of Risen Reef. So we're playing more pitch elementals, like the build has lost a few hate bears that is playing 4 Risen Reef. So it allows you to just play a more fair game, and Showdown of the Skalds works particularly well with Risen Reef because it gets you a lot of lands. Like ramping with Showdown of the Skalds is amazing.
Do you consider like what your enchantments cost? So I notice you have no 3-mana enchantments, so you have no 4-mana creatures, and that's a very conscious decision.
That's a very conscious decision because there's only one playable 4-mana creature in Modern.
Omnath.
Exactly. Which you don't like getting on your end step.
Right, fair enough.
And there is no playable 3-mana enchantments.
Well, Blood Moon.
There's no 3-mana playable enchantments you want to sacrifice because you have Clothes and Blood Moon.
Right.
And in a lot less playable realm, you have Treacherous Blessing and Oath of Kaya.
Okay. And you're not playing black.
Exactly. You could, in the first versions they did, we actually played that, but Oath of Kaya is not a playable card in Modern nowadays.
Right.
3-mana Lightning Helix is not good enough.
At sorcery speed.
At sorcery speed. With tiny upside that if they attack your non-existent planeswalkers, you drain 2.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I love the look of this list. This looks super sweet.
The first deck list uses Showdown of the Skulls due to being an enchantment. The second and third one actually abuse an interaction that's pretty close to the Shepherd of the Flock Showdown of the Skulls you did. Which is a card I absolutely love and have tried to defend a lot, which is Broadback.
Yes.
So Broadback works in 2 amazing ways for Showdown of the Skull. It might ramp you on turn 2, so you get a turn 3 Showdown with an extra land drop because you just go turn 1 fetch, turn 2 fetch land. On your opponent end step, you double fetch, you Broadback, and you go up to 4 lands on turn 3, and you get your 5th land drop. Secondly, it allows you to get insanely value turns when you go turn 4 or 5 Showdown, and when it sacrifices, you get to get back any permanent that left the battlefield this turn, plus your Showdown of the Skull. Broadback becomes a 2-mana ramp plus Showdown of the Skulls a lot of the time because you just fetch before you get it again. Fetch lands make Broadback a ridiculous card in a lot of scenarios.
And then you also, because you're playing Fury and Solitude, it can just be a natural way to get those back as well.
Exactly. So a lot of the time you're just gonna go, like a really common play pattern against aggressive decks was turn 1, play something like an Abundant Growth. Turn 2, your opponent plays a creature and you go, okay, fetch land, Solitude, get back my Solitude, get back my fetch land. And my 2-mana source, and my 2-mana instant was remove a creature, put a 3/2 lifelink into play, Rampant Growth.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And it has a lot of extra. So Broadback allows Showdown of the Skulls to be the best dig spell you can find because it's the only one that's pretty amazing to get back because it's an ETB that's worth 3 or 4 mana, and B, it's gonna sacrifice itself. You don't have to work to get it in the graveyard. It's like the Fury, the Solitude, or the Faithless, right? Because yes, sometimes you're gonna get back at the Teferi with Broadback, but that's not as easy, right? It requires either setup or your opponent attacking into it just when you're holding up mana.
Right. So you have 2 different brought back lists here. One of them is Naya, And one of them is 4 color.
Yeah.
So what are the pluses and minuses? And of course, they're both Urian lists.
No, I think, we have the Urian list, but there's also the one that Penash, that started in our Discord and has gone to make their own Boros brought back. So there's this Boros brought back Discord, which is just filled with builds like these ones. Like the one I just sent.
Okay. So what do you think the advantages are of 4 color versus the like Naya or Boros brought back list?
So 4 colors is, of course, as per usual, a lot more greedy. It allows you to play... It always allows you to play more powerful spells, allowing you to play your more axes while being less focused on what you're doing. If you're going to play against a meta where you know you're gonna face a lot of creatures and Solitude and Fury are gonna be amazing, the Boros one, I think it's better. Like, just look at the build. It's literally 4 Ephemerate, 4 Esper Sentinel, 4 Ragavan, 4 Broadback, 4 Cleansing Wildfire. It plays 2 Teferi, sometimes it plays 4 Captain Ranger of Fios. Here it has a 2-2 split, 4 Showdown of the Skull, 4 Solitude, 4 Fury. So it has 9 1-drops, 8 2-drops that ramp you, 4 creatures on the 3 cost, 4 Showdown, and 8 pitch elementals that are removals. This deck crushes any sort of aggro deck to the ground. But even if you start getting 2-for-1s against control, what are you getting out of those 2-for-1s?
Right.
Yeah, okay, you're drawing a lot of cards, you're getting almost triggers. Okay, I'm gonna play my 3rd Esper Sentinel. This deck really relies on the Showdown counters to close games. Like,
okay.
Also, it plays Flaxons of Troquera plus Cleansing Wildfires as an additional ramp, which is a pretty cool combo. It's a pretty cool line to have.
Yeah.
And the Naya version points to similarly the same plan, while having access to Elamri's Call, so you can play you can play fewer pitch elementals if you have Elamri's Call to go get them. Elamri's Call plus pitch elementals is particularly good because it isn't as tempo negative as it would be to call for a spell you actually have to pay.
Right.
So in Modern Showdown of the Skalds tends to bank more than its counters in the 2nd and 3rd step. It relies on the fact it's either a piece of material that's really expensive with a huge ETB, or the fact that it's a piece of material that puts itself into the graveyard and get back with the Broadback synergy. Because when you get sometimes you just go Showdown of the Skulls, find a 2nd Showdown, the 2nd Showdown finds you the Broadback to get back the 1st one, and you just start looping Showdown of the Skulls against your opponent. You're winning that game. I once got into a position where I was putting 3+1/+1 counters per spell into a Ragavan. I attack with a 9/8 Ragavan. That's gonna close the game eventually. And sometimes you just I have a picture where my opponent go to 18, attacks with all, and now all I have on board is a 4/4 Fury. And I was able to chain 5 spells in a single turn, attack for 18. Those are the dreams.
Yes, absolutely.
That's the best part about the deck. With that being said, the Naya, like the 4-color version, actually, the last SCG, I think, or big tournament there was, the top 8 deck was a 4-color midrange that had access to Broadback and Showdown of the Skulls.
Oh, okay.
So it's not worse than the other version, it's just a bit more reliant on the graveyard, and it's a lot more grindy. It replaced the Reserve Rift package with Showdown and Broadback, which allowed you to ramp a lot. So Broadback is sort of a feast or famine card, right?
Yeah, yep.
It's either double ramp and growth on turn 2, or you top deck it in the late game and have a 2-mana do nothing instant. So it's just on that weird spot in the timeline.
So which one do you like, though? Just your generic preference?
I just love 4-color. I just love 4-color midrange. 4-color midrange and Broadback. I just cannot say I can't say no to Broadback. So I say Broadback. I think of Showdown of the Skulls because it interacts well with Broadback and the pitch elementals. So it's like a triad, you know. Broadback loves both. Showdown of the Skulls loves elementals and Broadback. Pitch elementals love Broadback and Showdown. Broadback loves pitch elementals and Showdown. They all work well among each other. So you just played it 16 card package together.
Yeah, it's a devil's 3-way there, it sounds like.
Besides that, I haven't found much else for Showdown of the Skulls in Modern. I always found it in shells that relied on it being an enchantment or just the Broadback synergies. I never saw it without any of those, I think.
Yeah, 4 mana is a lot in Modern. So I think the fact that we're finding ways, like you say, the turn that it's being played is super tempo positive is one of the big keys, and I think that's because you get so many cards out of it. The fact that you're having to pitch a spell to do it is sort of negated.
Exactly. So the only other deck I have since played, now that I was thinking about it, is in a Ferrus Rokirik deck.
Oh, okay.
I think it was a 2-of. I didn't add it here because I didn't even find the deck list. It was a long time ago, but it's a pretty relevant synergy because it wasn't playing like the 5 colors general rock hero like you tend to see. It was like a Naya value deck with Ferrus, it had Showdown, it had Helix. It had a lot of multicolor spells, but mostly on Boros.
Yeah, so Ferris makes a 4/4 every time you cast a multicolor spell. So this is both a multicolor spell that in theory finds a bunch more multicolor spells. So when you chain all those together, and then you also are making bodies that get to absorb the +1/+1 counters from the second and third saga tokens, or saga counters.
I think it had Brain and 6, Manamorphose, and a lot of stuff that digging into it was actually quite good. But yeah, I think that's all we have to say about Showdown of the Skalds. Which is the reason mostly why we were a bit shocked it got so much interest, because it's an amazing card, it's a fun card, it's a simple card in between quotes. It's a cross spell. It's like you wanted us to brew with Ponder. I know what I can do with Ponder, everyone knows what I can do with Ponder.
Well, we're hoping to get some leagues in again. We don't need much of an excuse. You don't have to twist our arm too hard to get us to play
Value decks.
Showdown of the Skalds. Yeah, exactly. Whatever format it's legal in. Yeah, so we will test a few of these out again. This might be a great time to get back into the format playing Showdown of the Skalds, and I'll see if my mana betrays me. We'll see if we get to draw brought back in our opening hand with fetch lands in Modern. So that's going to be a fun week for us.
Exactly. So hope to see everybody on Monday. Hope to see everybody soon. Have a nice night. Bye, David. Thanks so much for joining us.
Take care, bud.
Bye-bye. If you enjoyed this episode and want to know more about our latest brews and what we're working on, you can support us via Patreon, which will guarantee you immediate access to our Discord, where you can find our faithless brewers alongside an army of mind-like players, all hoping to find their perfect brews. Finally, remember to tune in on Monday for our next episode regarding the Obscura. Will David's compulsion for building 3-color decks finally pay off? We will see on the following episode. Have a nice night and stay safe.